right, well let's start. So thank you everyone for joining us at Civi Scotland Meetup, for the April Meetup. These are meetups that we do around every quarter mainly for users of CiviCRM. We're Pooka Co. We are a small digital agency based in Edinburgh, down in Leith. And we look after Civi for a number of clients, but there are other agencies plenty out there that do the same across the UK and around the world. So joining me in the room today is my colleague Paul from Pooka.
Hello.
And Mads is online. My other colleague, Mads Mitchell, will be giving you a talk about UK GDPR and how Civi can be used to accommodate some of the regulations that are required when you are processing contact data within Civi or doing digital comms. We'll try and wrap up by 4 at the latest. Usually the presentation's about half an hour, and that hopefully allows people to ask questions at the end. And the idea is, well, that we all share, and that other users of Civi maybe know the answer to questions. There are other developers and integrators of Civi online as well. So yeah, just really interested to hear how you're using Civi. Any questions that you have, do take the opportunity to ask. And you're very welcome to join us at any time or any of these meetings in Edinburgh. We're based at the, these meetups are based at the Melting Pot, which is just behind Waverley Station, so really easy to get to if you can get into Waverley, and we're always welcome to see you and give you tea and biscuits if you're here. So usually with these meetups, what we do is start by doing a bit of an introduction to different elements of Civi for people who maybe aren't familiar with CiviCRM and looking to adopt it. As I say, we're Pooka, we are a CiviCRM contributor and partner. And today we're going to talk a bit about an introduction. First of all, an introduction to comms in CiviCRM. And just before we started the meeting, I realised that none of the demo videos that I'd recorded this morning for this session were working. I think they were really kind of pixelated. So I'm going to do a live demo, which I try not to do, but I will attempt to do that today. So I want to give you an introduction really to what type of digital communications and other communications you might manage or might want to manage in CiviCRM. And broadly, I guess it falls into 3 different categories. So first of all, CiviCRM is really useful for handling bulk and marketing emails. So whether it's your members or supporters e-newsletter, or you're wanting to do mail merges for a big mail merge to your membership or to the board members, Civi is a good way of doing all of that. Obviously, if we're talking about bulk marketing emails, we're often talking about needing to get some sort of consent from your users who are signing up to those newsletters, or you may find that there are other legal bases on which you might want to email a lot of people. So Mads will be talking a bit about that and how Civi can be set up to handle those sorts of opt-ins. Another type of communication might be transactional. So that might be when somebody purchases a membership, you want to send them an invoice, you don't necessarily need opt-ins for that. When you're wanting to tell a member that their membership is coming up for renewal, again, that could be a contractual thing. You have to tell your members that their membership needs renewal, some action needs to be taken. Event confirmation emails, things like that, contractual way of delivering some sort of a service. So the legal basis there could be contractual, or it could be some other kind of legal basis, and Mads will go into that in more detail. Another thing that Civi does pretty well is filing. So if you want to store your emails to your contacts, your members, within Civi, so that the rest of the team can sort of dip into those and see those communications with your contacts, you can store emails in Civi as well. You can file them there. You can send individuals emails from within Civi. Again, all of that must be proportionate, and there must be some kind of legal basis for storing and processing those as well. So that's kind of an overarching view of the types of communications that you might want to be working in Civi with. Let's talk a bit about bulk and marketing emails first. So I'm going to show you how you might use Civi to send a newsletter as you would maybe through MailChimp. So I'm going to just click on New Mailing here. And in Civi, you have this CiviMail tool, which handles bulk mailing, and there's also an email editor called Pooka Co. So let's create a quick email, a borough dispatch for April 2026. So this is coming from us at this imaginary organisation, Boroughs Without Borders. And in Civi, you can set up groups of contacts, and those groups can be mailing lists. So we've got a number of mailing lists set up in Civi here. Things like current members, we've got the board members, volunteers, newsletter group, but we want to send this particular newsletter to the Borough Dispatch newsletter group. So I'm going to choose them as the people we're sending to. And then I'm just going to have a subject for my email. So this will be the Borough Dispatch newsletter, April 2026. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to the next step, and then we can start to edit up our template here. So we've got a template already set up in CiviCRM for Boroughs Without Borders as a starting point. You can see you can, rather like in MailChimp, you can sort of drag and drop different block layouts here into the template, and then you can test and see how that mailing might look in people's inboxes as well. So that's all very editable and configurable. And when you're happy with that, you close the email, and then obviously you can come here to options to whether you want to send the email immediately, or if you want to choose to send it, maybe later this afternoon, go for 6 p.m, submit mailing, and then Civi's going to start mailing that out at 6 o'clock this evening. So that's one way of using CiviCRM for sort of bulk communications. One other way of doing it, and I think I am logged in now, so let me just reload this page. Another way you might want to work with Civi is mail merging. So you'll have probably done that in Microsoft Office, in Word. You can do similar things in CiviCRM. So here in Civi, we've got some groups set up. As I said, we've got the Boroughs Without Borders staff, we've got the Council of the Warren, and let's say we want to send a postal mailing to the Council of the Warren. We want to send them minutes of the latest board meeting. So if I go and have a look at the contacts who are in that particular group, we've only got 8 people on the board, so that's them. Now we can then choose for those 8 people to come in here, and maybe we want to print mailing labels. We could do a mail merge, or merge a letter, but let's print mailing labels. That's then going to allow us to choose our Avery labels and click on Make Mailing Labels, and that will give you something like this. Of course, you can set up your own label sizes as well. So this is all really out of the box with Civi, nothing particularly clever going on here, but it's just a way you can use it for these sorts of communications. So the next thing we want to talk about is transactional email. So this is anything where maybe it's a sort of automated email that goes out when somebody books for an event or renews a membership or an invoice gets sent. So let's go and have a look at that in CiviCRM. Let's refresh this page. So in this case, we've got an event set up. This is a forthcoming Big Dig conference for 2027. And this is an event that we're selling online through our website and managing attendance in CiviCRM. So there are going to be various people signing up to this event online. What we have an option of doing here in Civi under scheduled reminders is to set up some sort of event reminder. Maybe we want to send something a day before the event to remind people they've booked and tell them what they have to wear, or remind them what sessions they've booked. Or maybe we want to set up a scheduled reminder after the event, to say, how was the event? Do you want to fill in a questionnaire? So you can set up these kind of transactional emails in Civi. They're more automated. In this case, this event reminder is for the Big Dig conference, and it's going to go out to anybody who has a status of registered for the event. And in this case, we're going to send it out on a date relative to the event start date, 1 day before. So 1 day before the event start date and time, this is automatically going to be sent by Civi. It's going to record an activity against the contact record, so we see that the email has been sent to the particular contact. And it's going to come from us at Boroughs Without Borders. And what I've done here is I've set up this template as well. Actually, I'll show you that for the next mailing. For this mailing, let's go for just something like this. So dear contact first name, and this is a token in CiviCRM. So this is like a mail merge token that will automatically plug in the first name of each contact that this email is going to be sent to, and it's going to be sent to anyone who's registered for this event. So we're looking forward to welcoming you to the Big Dig conference tomorrow, and this might include something like a Zoom link that you want to go out before the event. So that's one example of transactional emails in Civi. Again, you can have things like membership renewal reminders, you can have receipts for membership renewals. Maybe you want to send transactional emails when people make a donation, thanking them for that. So that's Civi transactional emails. Next up, filing emails in Civi. So in some cases you might want to just store email correspondence in Civi, so it's not just you who gets to see the emails that you send to your board members or other contacts. You can allow other people who have access to the contact records in Civi to see those emails. So in this case, let's show an example of that. So this is a contact record in CiviCRM. This is Thistle Hopper. And you can see that Thistle Hopper has a membership here that just began. Now we want to send Thistle an email to say, thanks very much for joining, welcome to your membership. And you can do that in Civi under the Activities tab. So if I come to Activities here and I come to New Activity, I can send an email directly from within CiviCRM. So this is coming from Boroughs Without Borders, and this is going to Thistle Hopper. And in this case, I am going to use a template that I stored previously. So in Civi, if you have messages that you're using a lot over time, you don't want to be writing them out every time you come to send a new member's welcome, composing a new welcome letter each time. So we're going to store some user templates here in Civi, and this one will just pre-populate this message template. Welcome to the Borough Collective. And then we've got a nice logo in there, and we can say, dear first name, warm and fluffy welcome to the Borough Collective. So we could obviously customize this for this particular user and then click on send email. And what that does then is that stores a record of that email in CiviCRM. This was added by myself, Rowan Nightwisk, logging in to send an email to Thistle Hopper, and I can always come back and view that email and see what was sent. And that goes for anyone else on the team who has access to that record. Now, there might be other ways that you want to file email in Civi as well. So one of the other things that Civi has, which is quite a nice thing, is an Outlook 365 integration. So if you don't want to have to keep logging into Civi to work with your contacts, you might want to use an extension for Outlook. So you can actually use that to look up contacts on your Civi database to send emails to. You can also use it to file emails that you're sending from Outlook into CiviCRM. So in this case, this is an example of Outlook there on the left. You've got this CiviCRM tab on the right, and allowing you to save this email into a particular contact record from there. If you're not using Outlook, you could use a catch-all email address that you can blind copy any emails you send from whatever email system you use, and those will be scooped up by Civi. And so long as there is a contact that matches the email address that you're sending to in Civi, then that email will automatically get filed as an activity against that contact record in Civi. So I'm going to stop talking. Hopefully that's been a useful introduction to just some of the things Civi can do in terms of communications and emails for people who are new to CiviCRM. But the meat of this talk is going to be from Mads today, which is going to be about how you might think about CiviCRM and any requirements you have around GDPR, UK GDPR, PECR and compliance.
Thanks very much, Marcus. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay at the moment. I don't have a presentation or any videos that I've pre-recorded that haven't recorded or worked. We'll do a bit of screen sharing in a moment, but for the minute, I guess just a bit of chat about sort of data protection and CiviCRM in general. Just for a bit of background with this, I'm part of the Pooka team, but I also have another hat that I wear as head of digital with Humanist Society Scotland, which is a membership organisation, charity based in Scotland with over 15,000 members and many more contacts. I've been using CiviCRM in that context for over 10 years, and I had the pleasure of implementing all of the sort of GDPR stuff back in May 2018 with CiviCRM. So I've been looking at this stuff for quite a while, and it's something that I revisit frequently. So just to give you a bit of context about, where and when I'm using these things. So I'm not going to go into loads of detail about data protection requirements. I mean, I do need to touch on them so that we understand what it is I'm talking about. But as much as I'd like to turn it into a data protection session, a training session, it's something that I say that runs entirely counter to your understanding. Please stop me, not because I'm itching for a fight or a debate or anything. It's just that I want to make sure that everything's useful and that what I'm saying is sort of resonating with people. Data protection is really complex, and you need to remember what's true in one organisation isn't necessarily true in another. Lots of variables, lots of factors to consider. That's my opening gambit, really. So if you've installed the GDPR extension, really what I want to say straight up is, if you've got that GDPR extension in place and you think that's GDPR taken care of, unfortunately it's not the case. Got some time left at the end of the session, and then the plan is kind of touch on some specifics there that kind of raise some questions for me, but that's not the most constructive content for a 20-minute session. Got lots of other stuff to look at too. But following on from what Marcus was saying there, we're talking kind of specifically here about electronic direct marketing. So the rules I'm talking about actually really aren't necessarily part of UK GDPR. They're set out by the Privacy and Electronic Communications Regulations, or the PECA, as people unfortunately like to refer to it. There are some caveats, of course, that we should bear in mind. What I'm saying is in the context of sending direct marketing by email. So basically email newsletters is really what we're talking about here, and sending them to individuals, because there are different rules for sending direct marketing to other organizations, which we won't go into here. Not all emails to individuals require consent, but direct marketing will do. What's marketing? What makes something direct marketing? Pretty much anything that promotes your organization's aims and ideals. So you might not think it's marketing, but it probably is. Basically everything pretty much falls into the category of marketing. So you will need consent before you send marketing to your supporters. Excuse me. And you'll probably be aware that with changes to data protection recently, charities are now able to leverage what's known as the soft opt-in. And that doesn't mean that you don't need consent. I know there's a lot of talk about it at the moment. It just means that you're able to sort of assume in certain situations that there is consent. But it's subject to some really strict conditions, and ultimately the difference is likely to be that your organization can, in certain situations, ask people to untick a box so that they don't receive newsletters, rather than asking them to tick a box to, yes, please receive an email newsletter. So park all of that stuff to one side. That's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about sort of direct marketing. So again, to clarify, Marcus was talking about transactional email providers and things there, and transactional emails, and that word transactional is a word we're going to be using here too, but with a specific meaning, which is transactional emails are things like receipts, password reset emails, confirmations, all of those things, and they're not subject to this requirement for consent. They're not covered by the Privacy and Electronic Communications Regulations, because that's kind of about marketing really. But they are subject to GDPR, so you do still need to have a lawful basis for sending them, but it's just the PECA that's not relevant here. But before you start thinking of ways to beat the system, just pack loads of marketing content into your receipts and send that without consent to people. It just makes your transactional emails direct marketing. So then you'd need consent to send your password reset emails, and you've just caused yourself a massive headache. So let's not think about that. Not trying to be clever and get around things. We're trying to be really compliant. If we're talking about consent, in order for it to be meaningful, we need to be able to request it, people give their consent, but they're also able to withdraw it as well. So what that means is we've got, we need to have a mechanism for people to subscribe and unsubscribe from newsletters. Yeah, you know, we present someone with a standalone form, you know, enter your email, join this newsletter, or maybe it's part of another process, it's signing up for an event or anything else. You need to have a clear indication that people actually want to sign up to that, or that they have decided not to sign up to that, if we're talking about our soft opt-in, but that's just me complicating matters. So we have people that want to subscribe to the newsletter, and people who want to unsubscribe from the newsletter. So Marcus looked at our groups in CiviCRM. You know, it's simple enough to set up a mailing list in CiviCRM. That's how we have our contacts in a group configured to be a mailing list, and then that becomes available to CiviMail. So if you're using Mosaico or anything like that, that's how you choose your recipient list. But how contacts actually get into those groups is what we should be looking at here. And some of the issues that I've found in working around this is things like adding people manually to those groups. So where it's not the individual that's actually adding themselves to a group through, say, a public-facing form, they're not filling in their email address and saying, can you please sign me up to this newsletter? For example, you have a member of staff who speaks to someone on the phone and they say, do you want to sign up to a newsletter? How do you record consent in that situation? Because, you know, you just add them to a group, it will just say they've been added to a group by your administrator, and it can be quite difficult. So there are a couple of settings and things. Well, and also the other thing is, if you have a public-facing form and it's, you know, available to anybody to enter any email address in there, how can you be sure that the person that's entered their email address, or the email address that's been entered, actually belongs to the person and it's not someone just being daft and plugging things in on your website? And the answer there is to enable what's known as the double opt-in. So I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. Hopefully that's showing now. Just to show you where this sits, because it's not enabled, I think, necessarily by default. It's under CiviMail and your CiviMail component settings. And you've got these two options here. I'm sure there is a difference if I pay a lot of attention to this between enable double opt-in for profile groups field and enable double opt-in for profiles which use the add to group setting. But what the double opt-in means is that you don't just enter your email address into a field and then you're added to a group. It actually triggers a confirmation step. So it will send an email to that address and then they have to take an action. The recipient then confirms that they want to be added to that group. And if they don't take that step, they just kind of end up sitting in a pending state that you can see in CiviCRM. So that's really good for collecting that consent. And it's easy for that to be triggered if you're using a profile set up for mailing lists, which I think is the way that this was generally done in the past. I'm not going to run through all of the steps for setting up a kind of publicly exposed set of fields using a profile to show people's mailing lists. But what I am going to show is is how that looks using Form Builder. So I really like Form Builder for newsletter signups, and I will show you how that looks. I'm actually signed in there. So the reason that I really like Form Builder for newsletter signups rather than profiles is that they're more flexible for starters, but you can use these in different contexts as well. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I mean, this is probably doesn't look particularly groundbreaking. you've got first name, last name, and email address. Choose what you want to hear about. When you submit that, it will send individual confirmation emails to the person who's signing up, and it's only once they've confirmed both of those that they'll be added to both of those mailing lists. So that's great and relatively straightforward. And also you can choose very easily which groups you want to put in there. And if I just show you the back end of this very briefly, it's a matter of choosing where this is and who has access to it, and any confirmation messages and things like that once people receive this. But if we look at the subscription list here, we just have all of our groups that are available. You can drag and drop those, so it's nice and easy to change how that looks, and any other information that you might want to grab at the time of sign up, but we want to keep it nice and easy. But what we can see is we've got these allowed actions, these checkboxes, and that means that this form can both, if we look at it again in just here, it means that if you are signed in, for example, if I was signed in and I was subscribed to this events mailing list, I would have the ability to uncheck that box and kind of manage the mailing list that I'm subscribed to. So that's quite nice. But also there might be situations where you want to ask people to subscribe to a mailing list, but they just choose to ignore it. And you wouldn't want to then say, well, actually now you've accidentally unsubscribed from a mailing list by virtue of not selecting to be part of a mailing list. You don't want to accidentally unsubscribe people. So I'll give you a slightly better example of that, if that's a little bit hard to follow. And the reason I think this is really cool is that it enables that scenario I was talking about a second ago, when we were talking about having a member of staff. So I signed up to a newsletter earlier. So you can see that Matt's newsletter is subscribed to campaign subscribers. Now, if I wanted to go and sign up to our events newsletter as well as a member of staff, I'm going to come down here to this contact newsletter sign up, and this is another form builder form. I've configured this to say, because it's only available to, say, member of staff or whoever else has got access to CiviCRM in the back end, can use this form to add a contact to a newsletter, and it will send the contact a confirmation email containing a link they must click before being added to the mailing list. So the importance of that being that will record their consent once they've done that. Even though you're the one that's taking the action to subscribe them, you then have something that indicates that further action has been taken, that they have actually consented to that. But what you'll see is, even though I am subscribed to this group, to the campaign updates group, this box isn't checked. And that's because the only action you can take with this particular form in Form Builder is to subscribe. You cannot unsubscribe through this form. And that means I'm thinking of a scenario where I open a contact record and I think, was that box ticked when I opened this? Or was that box unticked when I opened this? And I'm worried now I'm going to accidentally overwrite something that I didn't mean to. So this is a single use form. All it does is subscribe people to newsletters. It doesn't care whether you're subscribed to it already. I am not, by submitting this, going to accidentally unsubscribe myself to any mailing list because they're not checked. And that's not really how profiles work when you're just exposing group membership and allowing people to kind of opt in and opt out. So I think this is really cool. I think that's a really nice way of working. And also, I can see how people might get confused about the actual kind of functionality and operation of this as, a person coming in and trying to add people. So make it really clear that you're not going to change anything. You're just going to trigger this double opt-in step. So I think that's quite cool. And I think it's really nice that this is always going to just work in the context of the contact that you're viewing. And it's really quite easy to set up in Form Builder as well. Once that's in there, there's lots of different options that you can configure. I think that's really nice and flexible. I think that's really good. Bear with me one moment.
so that is your so that's your double opt-in. The other thing that Marcus was talking about was tokens, and using those for mail merge within Mosaico, and when you're actually putting your emails together. Of course, we need to allow people to unsubscribe from newsletters as well. So when we're sending things out, we need to always give people in every mailing that we send them, if it's a marketing mailing list, we need to make sure they have the ability to unsubscribe as well. So we have these tokens that sit in our newsletters, and and you can either, there are a couple that are available there. So you've got one that's opt out, which means I don't want to receive this newsletter. You've got one that's unsubscribe. No, it's the other way around. Opt out says I don't want to hear from you, and I don't want to hear from you via email marketing anymore, or unsubscribe, and that's just I don't want to receive this particular newsletter. And you can choose how sort of granular you want to be when you're adding those into your mailing in Mosaico. But the thing that I think is quite useful in to know about in CiviCRM is, if we come back to this is a slightly more up-to-date version of CiviCRM, so I'm jumping between two sites here, but there is a checkbox here that says disable check for mandatory tokens. Now that, if that is enabled, if you enable that control, you enable disabling. So currently, the mandatory tokens, you can't send an email without having those tokens within that. That's a really, really good sense check. But unfortunately, that's not always that useful, because there might be times when you're sending a bulk mailing, because it applies to all bulk mailings. What if you're sending a bulk mailing, for example, an AGM calling notice, or to a group of volunteers, and it's not really marketing, but using CiviCRM is the most effective way of sending something out, especially with the nice templates and Mosaico and so on. In which case, yes, you can disable that check for mandatory tokens. It does introduce a little bit of risk. I think it's a really good thing to have in place there. You either have someone who comes in and does this on a mailing by mailing basis, or what you could do is have specific Mosaico templates with different footers. So one of them you will use always for say your volunteer mailing, or however you're using this to communicate that doesn't require those tokens. And then you have a marketing mailing template as well that will always have those tokens in the footer. And they're really useful. The other thing I'll say is that if someone gets in touch with you and says, can you please unsubscribe me from a mailing list? Yes, you can say, well, you could do it yourself, but they don't really have to. If they really insist, then it's a good idea to know how you actually do that. And in this case, if we come back to me here, this is the group. You can just say, fine, I'm going to remove them from the mailing list. And the really handy thing about CiviCRM is that you can remove someone from a group, or you can delete someone from a group. And the difference there is that if it's a smart group that you're removing somebody from, if you delete them from a group and they still fit the criteria for that smart group, that the conditions actually haven't changed. For example, they haven't moved house, they're still within whatever catchment area you've set for your smart group. If you delete them from the group, then they'll just get added back in. But if you remove them from the group, that's different. They're kind of held over here. They won't be added back into that group unless you remove them, unless you delete them. So that's why you end up with this removed groups section on your contact record. And that's really, really helpful, because it can be a bit of a head scratcher if you are using smart groups and things for groups of contacts and mailing lists and things like that. Especially if you start getting into segments and anything like that. I'm not a marketing person, but yeah, these are things that you need to consider, I think. So yeah, I think in terms of being able to cover those sort of basic things around making sure you've got consent, making sure people can subscribe and unsubscribe, and understanding the difference between your transactional emails, bulk emails, marketing emails, and things. I was going to touch on some of the issues with the GDPR extension, which I looked at using quite a bit, and I don't want to be really negative and critical. I just think that there are some issues with using this. The functionality in terms of presenting different options of opting into marketing for different channels. So, for example, because we're talking about email marketing here, electronic marketing, and that is actually completely different. If you look at the rules under the UK GDPR for sending someone a piece of marketing through the post, you don't need consent necessarily. There are other lawful bases that are available to you there, so legitimate interest and things like that. But that just doesn't apply with electronic marketing. So it's really good to be able to sort of if people are sending stuff through the post, and I know that some people still are, but I assume with costs and things, it's less than it might have been in the past. But it does enable you to handle those things separately, and that's really great. Unfortunately, what it also does is it adds this field that says, I accept the data policy to all of your membership pages or anything else where you want to insert these sort of marketing sign up fields. And unfortunately, I accept this data policy just doesn't really mean anything under data protection. I mean, I think I said this to Paul and Marcus the other day, when was the last time that you visited a website for, I don't know, a large retailer, for example, and they asked you to accept a data policy? I mean, it's just not something that you see commonly, and it's just a misconception. It's a misinterpretation of consent as this sort of fundamental basis for processing personal information. And it's not that consent isn't an appropriate basis. It's just not always the appropriate basis. In fact, often it's completely inappropriate, including in this case. It's different from terms and conditions. Yes, you might accept terms and conditions of, say, membership or event registration or something. But unfortunately, as soon as I see something like that on a website, rather than saying these people really care about GDPR and my personal information, because I know that's why people want to use something like the GDPR extension, it's because they do care. Unfortunately, it sends a completely different message to me if I see something like that on a website. It says, I don't really understand this process as well as I should. So that's unfortunate, because I don't think that is the case. I think people really do want to do the best with data protection. So that's quite unfortunate. But more importantly, and I'm sorry if we're really running out of time here, Marcus, I've not got a not got a timer. The thing I wanted to touch on is the forget me element of the GDPR extension. And the reason that I want to flag that up is that will only work on a fully deduped database. If all of your contacts are deduped, then that might work. That might be something that's useful for you. But if you've got duplicate contact records anywhere in CiviCRM, and you're saying, well, this person hasn't contacted us in ages, and then you delete that through your, forget me process, but actually they rejoined last week, but you haven't deduped, you haven't actually kind of merged those contact records, you've just lost information, and potentially actually that could constitute a data breach, because you didn't mean to do that. That's the accidental destruction of personal information. I mean, how serious you think that is, I don't know, but there are potentially other consequences there, and just it could cause you headaches. But also, I get data erasure requests relatively frequently, and it's very rare that I delete anything other than just a couple of pieces of now no longer required information. And then I do need to go back and confirm with people that, have had to keep their gift day declarations, details of any contributions and things like that. So this isn't a blanket, right, well, erase my information, please. And then you have to say yes. And unfortunately, there is no granularity within that extension. So if anyone's thinking about using it or has been using that, I think be very wary and approach that with caution. Not only that, but I'm not entirely convinced that that is a sort of one-way process. I'm not sure that you can't, that you are actually fully anonymizing that data. And in order for that to be, fulfill the requirements of erasing data in response to a data erasure request, you would need to be sure that that data cannot, it's not pseudonymized, it's fully anonymized. That's a pretty high bar under GDPR. I'm not sure that it quite cuts it. So I know that was developed as GDPR was coming in, and everybody was kind of trying to get everything in place and trying to reassure themselves that they had processes and things that are there. But I think what's required now is probably a review of that extension. So rather than trying to be really critical, I'm trying to say to people, approach with caution, because I don't want people to be encountering issues with that. That was a lot of content for me to rush through very, very quickly. I wanted really to demonstrate that Form Builder is really cool. And I really like the group subscription stuff there. So well done to everybody who's been pushing that through. Hopefully it wasn't too garbled and people stuck with me with my data protection journey. Paul did say to me the other day that I should always bear in mind that probably the amount that I know about data protection, the amount that the next person knows about data protection are very, very, very far apart. And so I'm trying to do that, Paul. Thank you.
Good stuff, Mads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mads. And you'll get a sense of just how much Mads does know about all of these things, and she certainly keeps us right at Pooka as well. So we'll take questions on any of that. But I have a question first, Mads, which was just about the double opt-in, where within the contact record you had the form to allow you to opt somebody new in. Just could you maybe just kind of describe a case for that? Would it be somebody sitting, in a charity's reception, and somebody's at the desk saying, "Hey, can I join your newsletter?" And you're just wanting to opt them in on their behalf in a kind of compliant way. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of, it's to loop in the contact in the process, really, to say, well, we're initiating it, but then they are taking an action to confirm it. So just to think about another scenario, this is not really about data protection, but it's about creating a sort of audit trail. For example, if someone phones and makes a donation, and then you run through all of the spiel for collecting a gift day declaration, that's just been given verbally, and that's totally fine. But how do you then evidence that? And what we'd normally do is then send an email that says, "Thanks very much, and here's all the stuff that you said," and in CiviCRM. But it creates that email activity, and then that's the record, because it's been sent by email. It's just create something that wasn't there before as part of an audit trail.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Any questions in the room or online for Mads, or about anything we've talked about this afternoon? While we're waiting to see, I just have a couple of things to mention that I want to get in. So one thing you might have seen doing the rounds is a annual UK conference, CiviBRM, Civi Birmingham, will be happening in June. I think it's the 9th of June, Mads, is that right?
9th of June, yeah.
Yeah, so that will be in Birmingham, organised by our friends down at Third Sector Design. So, William, I think you're involved with in that. Do you want to say anything about the Birmingham conference?
Yeah, thanks. it's actually Michael that's doing most of the organising, so I've taken a back seat with this particular conference. But yes, it's going to be great. Please come along. I've put the link in the chat. It's brm2026.civicrm.org, and the tickets are already flying out the door, so make sure you get one while there's still tickets left. And we're also looking for people to speak. So if anybody's interested in talking at the event, it's going to be a single track event this time. So we're going for short talks, 20 minutes each, and we're focusing on end users. So we're trying to cut down the amount of technical talk and get people talking about how they use CiviCRM in their organization to share with other people. So yeah, please get in touch if you want any more details.
That's great, William. I think it's a real, the conferences I've been to, the CiviCons in the UK have been just so useful in terms of people sharing with each other organisation, and certainly for us as implementers and developers to actually learn from our clients who often, you know, are using Civi day to day. You know, they know a lot more about those day-to-day special recipes and things that you can do that we just often don't as developers. Yeah, it's really good all around, a good way to learn. And I also wanted to talk about...
We've got a raise hand from Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, yeah, please do.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mads about the disabling of the mandatory tokens. My understanding of one of the reasons for having those in there is so that your mailings don't get identified as spam, that the presence of those mandatory tokens in some way insulates you from reputation damage. But I've only heard that anecdotally, so I'd be really interested to hear your view on the impact of disabling the mandatory tokens for opting out.
I mean, that's a good question. I imagine that part of the reputational impact would be that people would be unhappy and would report it as spam. But also, yes, I think there's probably there's lots of noise going in the background. Yeah, there probably is an element of that as well. But I'd need to look into that more. But thanks for flagging that up, actually. I will do a bit of reading around the potential impacts there. I mean, I guess it also will also depend on who you're using to send your emails out as well. I think it'll probably be a number of factors. As Marcus was saying, there's different transactional email providers, so might be a bit of variation there. I don't know. Does anybody else have an answer to that?
My understanding is I think it would affect your reputation, and there's something that Google and other providers implemented recently, which is a one-click unsubscribe, which was implemented in CiviCRM. I'm not sure whether that would turn that off or not, but that certainly affects your reputation if you don't have that in bulk emails.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a difficult one if you're sending out board papers or something. I know these aren't likely to be huge distribution lists and just may not trigger those kind of reputational things that we're talking about, but it's, yeah, you don't want, well, I suppose if a board member doesn't want to receive board papers, then fair enough.
One of the things that I've started using for that is snap groups, which is a new extension in Civi. So basically you set up the parameters for a smart group and you create a smart group, and the snap group extension runs every 24 hours and turns that into a snap group. So you've now got two groups, you've got a smart group and a snap group, and they've both got the same name. But if you use the snap group as the mailing list, if people unsubscribe, if you're using smart group as the basis, like for volunteers or board members, if they unsubscribe from the snap group, they unsubscribe from the snap group. They don't unsubscribe from the smart group. So I found that in a couple of places that'd been quite useful to have in place. So you can then have keeping your unsubscribe links, and if like treasurer unsubscribes from his own organisation's emails, then so be it. But yeah.
That's brilliant, Craig. Thank you. That's why I love these meetings. I have to learn something new. So while we've got you, Craig,
Big boy did it right.
Before the meeting, we were talking about you've been running, or you've started to run a Civi meetup in Manchester. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about that and when the next meeting might be taking place.
So we've set up reset up a North of England meetup group, and there's two of us taking the lead, myself and Rose from Ruser Solutions. I'm based in Manchester, Rose is based over in West Yorkshire. So I'm doing kind of like a spring one, so we did one at the end of February, and if everything falls into line, then Rose will be setting something up for September, October time. So probably around or away from the CiviCRM in Paris. You mentioned to Birmingham. I also want to flag up Rose and Ollie from Northbridge are also running an 2-day admin training in Manchester in May. So it's a couple of weeks away, but a 2-day admin interface training course. So that's on the CiviCRM website as well if people are interested in that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Craig. And Mads has pretty rightly pointed out that there may well be privacy and data protection implications of Snap groups as well. But, we'll come to that some other day.
Oh no, sorry, that was more to do with your tracking opens and things.
Oh, tracking opens.
Comment in the chat there about newsletter mailings and opens, link clicks, and all of the tracking. All of the pixel-based stuff, which again is caught by the Privacy and Electronic Communications regulations, but there is no mechanism that people are bothered about, particularly at the moment, for controlling and gaining consent, opting in or out of that, but still.
Question from Ali at Action 40. Do you get a numbers report back from each newsletter mailing, like in MailChimp, which says how many people have opened the email, whether they've clicked on the links, and how many have unsubscribed, and how many have bounced?
I think the answer is, if it's all set up correctly, yes, you do. All of those things, I believe. Mads, anything else to add there?
No, just as I was saying, those things are sort of, you can turn them all on or off by default. You can choose to do that on a mailing by mailing basis as well. But it's a good idea to let people know that you're using that sort of tracking as well in any of your privacy information. Also that it's not infallible. I personally choose not to load any images in the emails that I receive, and there are lots of email providers a bit more privacy focused now, so don't think that is going to be 100% accurate all of the time, but yes, you do get that in CiviCRM too.
Technically, would that be the same thing as using analytics on your website, using those kind of analytics in your emails?
Yeah, it's just a different kind of storage and access technology. It's normally a pixel that's included in the email, or link decoration.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions?
Did we get a note from Ryan that the admin training in Manchester has been moved from May to the 8th of 9th?
I've just gone by what he said on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. It was being moved, yeah.
Okay, that's great.
So
okay.
8th and 9th of July.
All right, so lots of events to look forward to. We'll be back in, I'm not quite sure when the next date of the meeting is, but I'm not sure if it's early autumn or late summer or, yeah, anyway, we'll get all of that sent out across. There's a group on Meetup, there's the CiviCRM Mattermost channel for UK meetups, and we always promote the events there as well. So yeah, keep your eyes open. We'll be back in a few months' time. So thank you very much today for Mads for your presentation there. And if you would like to make a presentation at one of these events, we would gladly have you along. And that could be just about how you're using CiviCRM. It doesn't have to be technical, you don't have to be a developer. It's really useful to get presentations from users as well, because that's the audience we're trying to attract here as well.
Yeah, I think the thing that we've learned in the 3 or 4 sessions that we've done since relaunching CiviCRM Scotland meetups is that it's really nice to have something quite technical, as Mads has been doing today, but also to have something quite introductory, so more along the lines of what Marcus has been doing. And that way it's just something for everyone to get involved.
Okay, well, good to see everyone. Thank you for coming. As I say, do come along if you're in Edinburgh, come along and see us, and we'd love to have you along to the venue here as well. So yeah, enjoy if you get in the sunshine that we're getting here in Edinburgh. Go out and enjoy.